Hi guys! Welcome back to another vlog. For today's video, gumawa naman tayo ng gastos reveal natin for our Hong Kong trip last October to November 2023. So ayun nga guys, naisipan namin ulit mag-travel ni Hubby as our reward for our only son kasi first time niyang nagkaroon ng proper recognition sa school last September for his grade 3 awards. From kinder to grade 2 kasi lagi lang siyang online recognition lang. So last September nga, finally nakaakyat na din siya ng stage at masyado naman kami na proud as parents, kaya ito yung naging reward namin para sa kanya. For this trip, yung unang choice of airline talaga namin was supposedly dapat Hong Kong Express. Ito yung budget airline ni Cathay Pacific. Kasi nga biglaan naman namin plinano itong trip na to, so talagang dapat tipid trip siya. Then I thought of inviting my in-laws para naman makasama rin nila si Riley for a Disney trip. So let's start with our gastos reveal. To start with our miscellaneous expenses, let's start with our airfare. Sabi ko nga dapat Hong Kong Express lang kami, di ba? Kasi may nakita kami ni Hubby na seats for the three of us na only 16,000 pesos lang. But then yung in-laws ko, they prefer to go on another airline kasi mas gusto nila yung mas malaking airplane daw. Kaya naman napabook na rin kami sa Cathay Pacific. Pero my mother-in-law naman was kind enough and paid for the difference of our airfare. Kaya naman for our airfare, we only paid her 16,000 pesos and that's for the three of us na. For our hotel naman, my in-laws again preferred to book Holiday Inn Express Kowloon CBD2 since my mother-in-law kasi was a member of the Holiday Inn Express group of hotels. Something like that. So we booked this hotel for a total of 33,280 pesos for 4 nights. And yes, my husband and I booked our separate room for our family. That's like 8,320 pesos per night. We only booked it for 4 nights. Though 7 days kami in Hong Kong kasi we booked nga a Disney hotel for the remaining 2 nights. Next on our list is our Disneyland Hotel plus the park tickets plus our breakfast. So we paid a total of 42,432 pesos. Take note guys, this is only just for the three of us, yung room lang namin since my in-laws naman were booking their own room and then we just requested for a connecting room na lang for our rooms. Well, I cannot provide a breakdown of these charges anymore but we booked the Disney Hotel for 2 nights on a 30% discount. So lumalabas na parang 10,000 pesos lang siya per night. Kaya naman kami ni Hubby nag-decide na mag-Disney Hotel for the experience then for the last 2 remaining nights namin in Hong Kong. Kasi nga yung Holiday Inn Express namin was around 8,320 pesos per night. Mag-a-add na lang kami ng around 1,600 pesos per night. Naka-Disney Hotel na kami. And upon booking this room at the website of Disney, sinabay na namin yung pagbili namin ng park tickets and our meet and greet breakfast. Kaya naman umabot siya ng 42,432 pesos. Then we booked our Ngongping 360 tickets in advance through their website and we paid 7,180 pesos for the three of us. I also bought an eSIM through the Iralo app for 10 gigabytes of data good for 8 days and that costs 1,120 pesos. So for our total miscellaneous expenses even before we left the Philippines was around 100,012 pesos. Let's go now with our day-to-day expenses while we were on our trip. For the travel tax, my husband and I didn't pay for our travel tax because it was shouldered by my mother-in-law. So on day 1, which is our flight day to Hong Kong, the only thing we spent was for our airport to hotel transfer. Since we booked a van rental, it cost 600 Hong Kong dollars which is around 4,200 pesos. Kami naman na ni Hubby ang nag-shoulder naman ng buong van rental namin since my mother-in-law nga paid for our travel tax earlier that day. And then, wala naman na kami ibang ginastos since night flight ulit kami and natulog na lang kami pagdating namin sa hotel. So, for day 1, our total expense is only 4,200 pesos. On day 2, ito naman yung nag-Avenue of the Stars kami, then nag-Ichiran, and then the Peak Tram, and then bumalik kami sa Chim Sha Tsui to watch the Symphony of the Lights show. The first thing we bought was our octopus cards. So at first, we bought octopus cards for the three of us and it cost us 3,606 pesos. Tapos nawala nga ni Hubby yung octopus card niya at one swipe pa lang. So we have to buy another one for him and it cost us 1,500 442 pesos, and the total cost of our octopus cards that day was 5,048 pesos. Next expense would be our Ichiran meal or lunch. We spent 4,031 pesos for our ramen meal just for the three of us pa lang ito. Grabe, diba? Ganito kamahal yung Ichiran sa Hong Kong, guys. So, punta na lang kayo sa Japan. Next is our peak tram tickets. We paid 2,590 pesos for the three of us at doon na kami bumili ng tickets namin. And our last gastos for day 2 was our dinner, which cost us 936 pesos. So for day 2, our total expense was 12,605 pesos. For day 3, ito naman yung nag-Ngongping kami, and then nag-City Gate Outlet, and then Mongkok, and then the Temple Street. For day 3, we have to load up my son's octopus card and paid 721 pesos. That's for transportation. For our food naman, medyo nag-over the budget kami dito ni Hubby kasi naparami ng order ang aking sister-in-law at the Paradise Dynasty Restaurant where we ate our lunch at City Gate Outlet. So we have to somehow give our share naman. So we spent a total of 4,054 pesos on food alone. Those were the only expenses we had for day 3 kasi naman yung Ngongping tickets naman namin were already paid in advance. So our total expense for day 3 was 4,775 pesos. For our 4th day naman, this is when we went to Macau. So we went to Fisherman's Wharf, we went to Wynn Macau, we went to Senado Square, St. Paul Ruins, the Londoner, Studio City, Parisian, and Venetian. Iyan lahat yung napuntahan namin. First on our list is our transportation. Yes, napagastos tayo sa transportation natin kasi tumawid tayo ng Macau. So first, papunta, nag-ferry kami and we paid 3,606 pesos. Then, our total bus fares in Macau was 1,440 pesos. And then, nagbus na kami going back to Hong Kong at night and paid 721 pesos. Nag-load din nga pala kami ulit ng octopus card that day for 721 pesos. So, for our total transportation cost that day, it was 6,488 pesos. Next naman is our total food cost that day, which is 2,163 pesos. So, for day 4, our total expense was 8,651 pesos. For day 5, ito na nga yung lumipat kami ng Disney Hotel. Again, guys, hindi ko na isasama yung mga gastos reveal natin sa mga pinang-shopping namin sa Disneyland. Kasi as what I've said before, depende naman iyon sa inyo guys, yung mga shopping expenses na yun. For day 5, on our food expense, that was a total of 2,884 pesos. And then we have to load again our octopus cards and paid only 360 pesos. And lastly, gusto ko lang sana isama dito yung naging expense namin sa The Archivist. We had a total of 5 drinks that we ordered that night sa The Archivist ni Disney Hollywood Hotel, and we spent 4,687 pesos. So for our day 5, our total expense was 7,931 pesos. For day 6, ito naman yung Disneyland Park day namin. So sa food lang talaga kami gumastos that day, at saka of course yung merch shopping, pero hindi ko na isasama yung merch. So for our food on day 6, our total expense was 2,163 pesos. And that's the only expense that we had that day. For our last day naman, we had our meet and greet breakfast buffet, which was already paid in advance. So the only expense we had that day was our transportation cost kasi nag-taxi kami from Disney Hotel to the airport and we paid 1,300 pesos for our taxi fare. Kahit magkalapit lang sa Disney and airport talaga. My in-laws kasi preferred na mag-taxi na kami, kaya napataxi na rin kami ni Hubby. And now, let's recap all of the expenses again. So, first, for our miscellaneous expenses, before pa ng trip, that's 100,012 pesos. For day 1, it's 4,200 pesos. For day 2, it's 12,605 pesos. For day 3, it's 4,775 pesos. For day 4, it's 8,651 pesos. For day 5, it's 7,931 pesos. For day 6, it's 2,163 pesos. And for day 7, it's 1,300 pesos. So for this Hong Kong trip, our total spending was 141,637 pesos. And hindi pa kasama dyan yung mga pinagbibili naming merch. Alam nyo guys, para sa iba, isang bag pa lang itong 140,000 na to. Pero for me, I'd rather spend it on our vacations, on our travels. Kasi syempre, di ba, bag, ako lang mag-e-enjoy dun. Pero itong mga trips na to, buong family na mag-e-enjoy dito. So, pag-ipunan natin ang ating mga bakasyon because it really is worth every cent talaga yung mga memories na magagawa natin for our children. So, I guess that's it for this video, guys. Thanks again for watching and see you again on the next vlog.